Hey guys, in this video we'll talk about how to play Deathwatch competitively in 10th edition 40k before the codex is released. So we'll focus specifically on the Blackspear Task Force detachment and how to get the best out of it. And without further ado, let's dive right in. And first we'll start with the strength. I'm a big fan of Deathwatch and I really want to make them good. I think we need the codex to really have the greatest opportunities for very competitive Deathwatch detachment, but let's see what we have to work with. We have a couple of good unique unit choices, mainly the Watchmaster and the Proteus kill team, and also the Deathwatch veterans. So the Proteus kill team is one of those non-battle line for some reason units, even though they were troops in the previous 9th edition, they are no longer in that kind of category. It doesn't really mean much nowadays, but it might mean a lot in the future if the rules changes. So that's just something to keep in mind. Only the Deathwatch veterans are considered battle line currently, and they provide interesting variety to the regular Space Marine choices we have. We have a few limitations which we'll discuss in the weaknesses, the units that we cannot take as Deathwatch for some reason, but in most cases we can take almost anything. Next, mission tactics when used correctly. So mission tactics are our detachment rule, the thing that we get instead of, for example, doctrines in the Gladius detachment. So when we use them correctly, they can provide a very significant boost to damage. For those of you who don't know, we have 3 mission tactics available. So just like doctrines, you select one any time in any battle round, and it works until the start of the next battle round, and we only can use each one once. The first one gives you lethal hits for your entire army, both melee and shooting. The second one gives sustained hits 1, and the third one gives precision on wound rolls of 6s. All of these are great. Precision is very niche, but can be very important against some matchups. Like, for example, if you're trying to kill a unit of Terminators, Chaos Terminators with Abaddon, Abaddon is the most dangerous part of that unit. So if you can try to whittle him down or potentially even destroy him with your attacks, if you're focusing fire on him and trying to roll those 6s to wound, that may work, and you can even try to kill it. And obviously lethal hits and sustained hits are always great. You just need to make sure that in your list you're not double dipping into that, because it would be very annoying to have a character that gives you lethal hits like Lieutenant, and he's essentially not going to give you anything if your unit already has that. Another thing I don't like about mission tactics is that you're not getting any cashback sort of if you have already have this ability. Next is the Teleportarium strat. I really like this one. It allows us to have mobility with 2 kill team units at once, or 1 infantry unit, any infantry unit. It allows us to just pick that unit up and, like Grey Knights, teleport it away and then deploy it next turn. And the only problem is that you have to, as always, decide at the end of your opponent's turn, so you don't know what you have drawn in terms of your tactical cards, so you have to make that decision beforehand. Still, being able to teleport around is very important, especially if you have a lot of kill teams. So you can do that 2 times for 1 command point. Obviously, when we're looking at something like Hypercrypt Necrons, it doesn't feel fair that we have to pay command points for it, but alas. We also have a good enhancement that allows us to have the old Oath of Moment for just 1 turn. You're essentially nominating a target, and that target will, your entire army will be rerolling hit rolls and wound rolls against that one, and it's not nerfed by the change to Oath because it has its own separate wording, as far as I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong. Definitely not bad if you are planning a concentrated attack with a lot of mid-strength guns. For example, if you have my favorite triple Redemptor combination, being able to reroll all wound rolls on those Redemptors is gonna make a lot of difference. And even doing that once per game can be game-changing. And also there's another great enhancement, which weirdly is, I think, the best melee enhancement in the entire game currently, which is +1 strength, +1 AP, and +1 damage for the bearer's weapons. And it also is +2 to strength, AP, and damage if the bearer killed any model during the game. So as soon as someone kills anything in the game, they get just an incredible buff to their melee output, which weirdly, you wouldn't think that you would find that in the Deathwatch enhancements, but you did. So if you want to build a very strong smash captain, something like that, Deathwatch are the detachment to look at. By the way, if you want to win more games of 40k and you want me to personally look at your roster and figure out what may be wrong with it and what improvements we might make to it, check out the links in the description for my Patreon, where you can get all that help. Now the weaknesses, and forgive me for being very salty, but Deathwatch are my favorite faction in the entire game. They were my first faction that I've collected back in 8th edition, and this current iteration of Deathwatch is probably the least flavorful. Obviously, I understand that's just the index, but for now, what we have for now is the least favorable state of Deathwatch that I've ever experienced. We Deathwatch are supposed to be the most tactical and adaptive of all the chapters out there. And yet, for some reason, we don't even have a stratagem to fall back and charge or advance and shoot or anything like this. Things that Gladius, for example, gets just as a doctrine. We don't even have that as a part of our kill team abilities like we used to have back in 8th edition, where having a bike in your squad gave you one thing, having a jump back model in your squad gave another, which was very cool and very thematic. Then in 9th edition they changed it all to a command point thing, but at least we could use that in some cases. So having a black shield in the squad meant that you can heroically intervene, having a jump back guy in the squad meant that you can fall back and shoot, and so on. In this case, no difference. If you have more veterans, less veterans, they're just models. You don't get anything for having some particular combination. 3 out of 6 stratagems that we have are for bolt weapons specifically, giving us a very niche kind of a buff to those bolt weapons, like +1 to AP and +6 to range, which is nice. Now another one is ignoring cover and assault, I think, which is, it doesn't really spark joy in me at all. To be honest, that's a waste of paper. We could have had such a brilliant suite of stratagems, like the one that Gladius has, for example, or Custodes, or even Vanguard detachment, but we have this. We cannot use scouts because apparently Deathwatch are all about veterans who are supposed to be better than everyone, though there is no real difference between a Deathwatch veteran and a normal Marine. Any difference that you would actually notice, I mean. Instead, we are just left without the most efficient recon and chaff unit in the entire Space Marine book. The Watchmaster can only join Deathwatch veterans and the Proteus kill team. He cannot even join other kill team types because apparently that's just too awful if a firstborn guy is going to be running around with Primaris. They could have given us so many interesting opportunities to have those mobile, fast, adaptable squads. And just for you, if you don't know, Watchmaster gives his squad fallback, charge and shoot, and advanced charge and shoot, which is just a brilliant buff and explains why he costs so much. So we could at least have had those interesting builds where you build several kill teams and add a Watchmaster into each one of them, or perhaps maybe have like a captain's ability which mimics a part of the Watchmaster's ability, like an enhancement that you give to a captain, something of that sort. Instead, we are only limited to running him with the Deathwatch vets and Proteus kill team, and we cannot even join him to, I don't know, Blade Guard. And I understand why they wanted to do that. They wanted us to actually use the kill teams, but still it feels arbitrary. And most importantly, the kill teams are the shadow of their former glory. They have lost significantly in variety of war gear they are allowed to take, and just being always locked in price is also awful. So in terms of the special stuff that we have now, it's pretty much the heavy Thunderhammer. Thank God they did not remove that, because just this, it's a special part of the kit, the Deathwatch veteran kit, so they didn't want everyone to be angry, those people who've built them with hammers. And I love the Deathwatch hammer, and I'm glad they left it intact. Well, obviously worse now than it was in 9th edition, but they've made the regular Thunderhammer worse as well, so it's only fair. But we cannot take lightning claws on our veterans anymore. We cannot take regular Thunderhammers on our veterans anymore, so very, very limited and very boring. And we cannot even take a chainsword. Can you imagine imagine that? Cannot take a chainsword on a Deathwatch veteran. It was my favorite build in 9th edition, where I've built a very cheap kill team with just chainswords and shields, which was much cheaper than you would expect such an elite unit to be, and I've just enhanced their melee output by giving them buffs from other sources, and that was so cool and so interesting, and we cannot do that anymore. Some of the kill team abilities just don't make any sense, to be honest. Like, for example, the Fortis one gives you +1 to hit when that squad is attacking a half-dead unit. Just all of those, you get a bonus when your opponent is already lying in the dirt and pretty much non-existent. I don't understand those. And Indomitor one is better. It's +1 to hit if your squad is slightly wounded, and +1 to wound if your squad is half dead, which it's a weird one, but okay, I can get it. The worst part is that Indomitor is supposed to be full of interceptors and eradicators and aggressors, and you're not getting either of those special abilities that those squads are getting. So you're not getting rerolls from eradicators, which makes them half useless, to be honest. You're not getting the deep strike roll on the inceptors or any form that would make sense for a big kill team from them. You're not getting anything from inceptors. They're just a body with the bolters of plasmas, which isn't bad. It's just lackluster. I promise you, the segment of anger at the Deathwatch is almost over. Just one last thing. Thinking about the special issue ammunition rule, which was always a staple of Deathwatch, and it was extremely interesting in 8th edition. It was at least existent in 9th edition on the Deathwatch bolters of the veterans, and now I'm remembering the words of Vito Corleone when he said, "Look how they massacred my boy." The only special issue ammo we get now are those stratagems that I've already mentioned. That is it. None of that cool versatility that we could have had in this detachment. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe there will be some change in the upcoming Codex, Deathwatch Codex, whenever it comes out. And now the army composition. So what can we do with all that? What army can we build around the abilities that we have access to? Well, we just have to use the best things that Deathwatch provides for us. Otherwise, we already have enough problems on our hands, so we have to. Watchmaster's advance and shoot and charge ability is extremely powerful, so we need to use that with our big Proteus skill team to give it mobility it needs, because it's just a bunch of guys with 6 or 5-inch move depending on the contents. To get the best out of the teleportarian stratagems, I recommend to have as many kill team units as possible, and then, to be frank, the only ones that are good are the Deathwatch Vets and the Proteus kill team, so have that. We will have at least one big Proteus kill team and more of the Deathwatch Veterans. Deathwatch Veterans are essentially just the 2-wound Marines, and Proteus is 2-wound Marines plus Terminators plus bikes. Indomitor and Fortis just don't do enough of damage or anything to justify their cost, in my opinion. They should be like really cheap to justify not having all of those special abilities that are usually a part of the corresponding units from the Deathwatch Space Marines. I do like the veterans though. They have shields, so they have access to 4+ invulnerable save, which is not as important now as it was in 9th edition, but still good, and heavy Thunderhammers, which are damage 3 instead of the damage 2 on the regular Thunderhammer, and also strength 10. For Proteus, both Thunderhammer, Storm Shield Terminators, and Cyclone Terminators are good because you can have up to 3 heavy guns in the with your Terminators in the Proteus, and up to 4 Terminators in general. For some reason, they didn't allow us to have 5, which again is extremely annoying. Weirdly restricting, to be honest. So with Deathwatch Vets, a 10-man unit would cost you 220 points plus Chaplain, and with that you can get a pretty punchy unit with 12 attacks, strength 10, AP 2, damage 3, and dev wounds, plus a lot of sword attacks at strength 5, AP 2, damage 1. And obviously +1 to wound would help that a lot. And you can put them into a Land Raider, and that combo isn't bad. I also do think that you really want any melee capable character to have the Thief of Secrets, because it's just too good of an enhancement to ignore, and I think you would probably be better off using Captain or Chaplain for that role. In most cases, it'll probably be Chaplain, just because you will most likely have him in your army, where Captain might not be in the plans, especially considering considering how awesome Deathwatch stratagems are. Corvus Blackstar, arguably the best looking flyer in the entire Imperium, is unfortunately not that interesting to me because you can, for 60 points more, get a -1 damage Storm Raven that also has more guns and can carry a small dreadnought with it in addition to the infantry. So why would you bother with Corvus Blackstar? If I'm not understanding something, please correct me, but I think it's just a objectively worse unit. Apart from the looks, in terms of the looks, Corvus is just my love forever. Captain Artemis isn't interesting, to be honest, again, because he doesn't give you a free stratagem. Instead, he only gives you an ability to use a stratagem more times than once. So if you've used a stratagem already in the phase, which is a weird debuff of the regular captain's ability. I don't know why they decided to do that. He's a special character, so he should be better, not worse. His one also allows them to use a stratagem even if they're battle shocked, which, oh wow, thank you so much. And lastly, he also gives himself fight on death on 2+, I think. It's a shame because I really like the model and his lore. Spectre's kill team is a weird amalgamation of infiltrators and incursors, and you can also add the you can add reavers, you can add it's a club of losers. Sorry, I just couldn't help it. You can also add suppressors, eliminators, so all of the Phobos and lightly armored guys. Problem is that your squad gets both Infiltrator's ability and the Scout 6 ability, so in that sense it's an amalgamation of incursors and infiltrators. But unfortunately you're not getting the blocking reserves rule, which is why you would pay the points for infiltrators, and instead you get the interesting go back to reserves rule when you're outside of 6, so the same one as the scouts have. But the 5-man Spectre skill team costs weirdly 105 points, so more than infiltrators, but without the infiltrator's ability. So you be the judge if that is worth it or not. Other than that, you're pretty much left building the same Space Marine list as everyone else, but with only a couple of special units and very little flexibility with kill teams. And obviously, as we discussed, worse detachment in most cases, and you probably already know my recommendations regarding the Space Marine list, so I'll spare you that. Regarding the synergies, we have some. We can use 1 CP Hellfire round stratagems with the aggressors against a high toughness infantry unit, which can be fun because that gives you to wound infantry on 2+, which if the infantry unit is like toughness 6 or 7, that is nice. And obviously if they're closest, you're going to be getting the extra AP from the aggressor's ability, so not a bad amount of output. Or alternatively, you can use the Kraken round stratagem, the same cost for just to give them +6 to the range and also +1 to AP. So if you're targeting a very light infantry unit like toughness 3 or maybe 4, I'm not sure what the math there is, probably is in the favor of extra AP, then you can also get that instead. Or you can use the Beacon Angelus enhancement, which I think is, it's 30 points, and you get rapid ingress for 0 once per game and deep strike ability on that squad. So you can have extra mobility on one of your units. It's a shadow of its former wonderful glory. Of Beacon Angelus in 9th edition was just the best relic you could imagine. Here it's okay. Problem is that you'll have to, as always, wait until Battle Round 2 to actually deploy it, because we don't have access to, I don't think we have access to any units that can deploy from reserves turn 1, so we'll have to wait until Battle Round 2, so hopefully you have enough stuff alive until then. And the aforementioned Thief of Secrets in combination with, for example, 3 extra attacks and dev wounds with the Captain's ability can be quite a scary combination, because can you imagine that's a damage 4 sword with devastating wounds, and combo that, for example, with the once per game full rerolls from Tome of the Ectoclades, and that Captain can be very dangerous. Obviously for that you'll need a Watchmaster as well to carry the Tome of the Ectoclades, because this enhancement can only go on the Captain or Watchmaster, so keep that in mind, but that's a nice interesting combo right there. And now lastly, the roster example. So here is what I've concocted. I think this is probably the best that you can do with Deathwatch outside of some weird wishy-washy combinations with strange kill teams that I don't honestly believe that they will work if you have a very cool idea, please let me know in the comment section. I would really diligently analyze it, but this is how I see Deathwatch currently. Chaplain with the Thief of Secrets, he joins a 10-man Deathwatch veterans unit with 4 hammers and 6 guys with shields and swords to protect those 4 hammers. And those guys with the Chaplain, they go inside a Land Raider Redeemer, obviously, because it's the best one we have. A Watchmaster, he has the Tome of the Acticlates, and he joins the 10-man kill team, Proteus kill team. That kill team consists of 4 Terminators with 2 Thunderhammers and Storm Shields and 2 Cyclone missile launchers. So we have some of the shooting in the squad, and obviously the Cyclones should be dying last because they are the most expensive part of the unit. Probably we don't have their current points, but that makes sense. And 5 veterans with 4 hammers and 1 sword and shield. So we have essentially 4 with another biker ablative models, and only after that you're starting to lose actually stuff that is important, which in my experience works quite well. Next we have a 5-man Deathwatch veterans unit where you have 2 hammers, 2 shield and sword guys, so just a small version of the big unit, which they can be anywhere, doing any role. They're mostly like your reserve unit that can actually punch reasonably well. 410 points, that's not bad. You also get an infiltrator squad just to be in your back line to keep it safe. And we have 3 Redemptors as tradition dictates, and a Calidus Assassin for secondaries and extra mobility. And it all comes down to 2,000 points on the nose. So again, let me know what you think about building Deathwatch lists. If you have a better idea, I would love to hear that, because as I said before, I'm a huge fan of Deathwatch. So if you have anything that you can share, please do so. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.